The alien village on the barren planet of Zarnis was once a thriving community, but now it was nothing more than a shadow of its former self. The once bustling streets were silent, and the homes, once filled with laughter, stood empty and broken. The machines that had powered the village for generations were now rusted and barely functioning. The land that had once been fertile had become dry and cracked. The villagers who had once lived in harmony were now struggling to survive. In the center of the village stood a large, crumbling tower that had once been the heart of the community. This tower had been the source of the village's power, providing energy, water, and food for everyone. But now it was dark, silent, and still. The people gathered around the tower, staring up at its broken structure with fear in their eyes. They knew that without it, the village would not survive. The villagers had tried everything to fix the tower. The engineers, scientists, and workers had all come together, working day and night, but nothing seemed to work. The machine that powered the tower had been damaged beyond repair by years of storms and neglect. The once advanced technology had become a mystery to the villagers, who no longer understood how to fix it. Hope was fading fast, and many began to lose faith. "What will we do now?" one of the elders asked, his voice trembling with worry. He had seen many hardships in his life, but this felt different. The village was dying, and no one knew how to save it. In the midst of this despair, a small figure stood off to the side, watching the villagers with curious eyes. Alex, a young human boy, had crash-landed on Zarnis months earlier when his spaceship had malfunctioned. He had been alone ever since, struggling to survive in a world he didn't understand. The alien villagers, though initially distrustful of him, had reluctantly allowed him to stay after he proved useful in repairing small machines and doing odd jobs. Alex didn't know much about the village's problems, but he knew that something had to be done. He had seen the way the villagers' faces drooped with sadness and fear. He had heard their whispers of how the village was dying, and he felt a deep sadness in his heart. Despite the strange and often unfriendly looks he received, Alex couldn't just sit by and watch the village fall apart. One afternoon, as he wandered through the wreckage of the village, Alex found himself near the remains of a broken-down machine. It was unlike anything he had ever seen before. The metal was old and rusted, and the strange alien symbols covered its surface. The machine seemed to hum faintly as if it still held some kind of power. Alex bent down to examine it. His hands brushed the surface, and for a brief moment, he felt something, a spark of energy, a flicker of life within the machine. Curiosity piqued, Alex spent the next few days studying the machine. He had no idea what it was or what it did, but he felt a strange connection to it. He had always been good with machines, even though he was just a kid. Growing up on Earth, he had often taken things apart and put them back together again, much to his parents' frustration. It was a habit that had stayed with him even after his crash landing on this distant planet. The more Alex tinkered with the machine, the more he realized that it wasn't like anything he had seen before. It was a complex system, full of wires, gears, and circuits. But there was something familiar about it. As he worked, he began to understand the basic structure of the machine, how it might have once functioned. However, it wasn't easy. Every time he thought he was getting close to fixing it, something would go wrong. Wires would snap, pieces would fall apart, and the machine would hum to life for only a few seconds before dying again. But Alex didn't give up. He was determined to figure it out, even if it took him weeks. One day, as he was working on the machine, an old alien engineer approached him. The engineer had been one of the few who still believed that the village could be saved. He had watched Alex work from a distance, skeptical at first. But now he saw the boy's determination. "You work on the machine with skill," the old engineer said in a low, gravelly voice. "But this technology is ancient. No one here knows how to fix it. It's beyond our understanding." Alex looked up. wiping the sweat from his forehead. Maybe, but I think I can fix it. I've been fixing things my whole life. I can do it. The engineer regarded him for a moment, his wrinkled face unreadable. Finally, he nodded. Perhaps you can. But be careful, young one. This is more than just a machine. It's the heart of our village. Alex smiled. I'll be careful. I promise. As the days passed, more and more villagers began to take notice of Alex's efforts. Some watched him work with interest, while others whispered among themselves. They had seen countless attempts to fix the machines before, and none of them had succeeded. But there was something different about this human boy. He wasn't like the others who had tried and failed. He didn't give up. One evening, as Alex was working late into the night, he felt a strange sensation. It was as if the machine was responding to him, reacting to his touch. He smiled to himself, feeling a sense of accomplishment. For the first time since his crash landing, he felt like he was doing something that mattered. The next morning, as the sun rose over the village, the machine flickered to life. It wasn't much, a small spark of light, but it was enough. The villagers gathered around, gasping in awe. Alex had done it. The machine was working again. Although it wasn't fully repaired, the small burst of energy was a sign of hope. The village wasn't dead yet. There was still a chance. The villagers, once filled with despair, began to believe again. And for Alex, that was all he needed. He had given the village a spark of hope, and now it was up to them to finish what he had started. Alex stood in front of the old machine, his hands trembling slightly from both excitement and exhaustion. It had been a long few weeks since he first found the broken-down device in the village's ruins, though it wasn't much, just a pile of metal and wires. It felt like the last chance for the village. Every night, Alex worked tirelessly to get it back into shape, but it had taken more time than he expected. The villagers, watching him from the corners of the streets and homes, had started to take notice of his progress. At first, they were skeptical. They had seen so many others try and fail, promising to bring the village back to life only to fall short. But Alex was different. His persistence was something they had never seen before, and it had begun to spark something in the hearts of even the most doubtful villagers. As Alex knelt in front of the machine, his hands deftly tracing the alien, symbols etched into the metal surface, he thought back to when he first arrived on Zarnis. He was a simple human child, stranded on an alien world after his spaceship had malfunctioned. The crash had been terrifying, and the days that followed were filled with confusion and loneliness. The villagers, an assortment of different alien species, had been cold and distant at first, unsure what to make of the lone human child among them. But as Alex worked hard to contribute in whatever small way he could, some of the villagers had softened to him. Now, as he continued working on the machine, the faces of the villagers no longer looked at him with distrust, but with hope. They had begun to believe that the impossible might be possible after all. One morning, as Alex was going through the pieces of the machine, an older alien named Korak approached him. Korak was a wise elder, a former engineer who had helped design many of the village's machines long before they had fallen into disrepair. The lines on his face were deep, and his eyes held the weight of years spent in a world that was slowly fading away. He had seen it all: the rise and fall of the village, the slow decay of hope, and the gradual loss of knowledge. "You're trying to fix the power core?" Korak asked, his voice gruff but not unfriendly. Alex looked up from the machine and nodded. "I think I can. I've got a few ideas, but I need more parts. It's just, I don't know if I can do it in time." Korak squatted down beside Alex and observed the machine carefully. "The core is a complex system," he said thoughtfully. "It runs on energy that we no longer understand. It's not like the simple machines we've used before. If you fix this, you'll save us all." But there's a lot you still don't know. Alex swallowed hard. I know, but I can try. Korak gave him a long look, then nodded slowly. I'll help. There are still parts in the old storage chambers, things that might work. You will need them. Alex's heart skipped a beat. Korak was offering help, something Alex had never expected from the elders. Korak's trust meant more than words could express. For the next few days, Alex worked with Korak to gather more materials. Together they scoured the village, looking for old parts, scraps of technology, broken-down tools, anything that might be useful. They dug through the remains of old buildings, sifting through piles of rusted metal and forgotten machinery. The sun beat down on them and dust filled the air as they worked. In the evenings, Alex would sit alone, thinking about the machine and how he could fix it. His mind raced with ideas, but it often felt like there was always one piece of the puzzle missing. No matter how hard he tried, the machine never seemed to work the way it was supposed to. Every night he would fall asleep with the image of the machine burned into his mind, feeling like he was just on the edge of a breakthrough, but never quite reaching it. One night, as Alex sat hunched over the machine, his mind started to drift. The quiet hum of the village's failing power systems filled the air around him, but he didn't notice. He had become so focused on fixing the machine that he no longer heard the sounds of the wind or the distant voices of the villagers. Suddenly, something inside the machine clicked. It wasn't loud, just a soft, almost imperceptible sound, but to Alex, it felt like a lightning bolt of realization. He immediately reached for the tools, his heart racing. The machine had been dormant for so long, but this small sound, this single spark, gave him a burst of energy. The hours that followed were a blur. Alex worked furiously, his hands moving with the precision of someone who had been working with machines for years. He tightened screws, reconnected wires, and recalibrated components. And then, just as the first light of dawn began to break, over the horizon something incredible happened. The machine flickered. It wasn't much at first, just a brief flash of light, but it was enough. Alex stood back, wide-eyed, as the machine hummed to life for a few seconds, just enough to show that it could work. It was only a small victory, but to Alex it felt like the world had shifted. He had done it. He let out a long breath, his body exhausted, but his heart full of hope. He had fixed part of the machine, the first step toward bringing the village back to life. It wasn't much, but it was enough to show that there was a chance. Alex smiled to himself. He wasn't done yet, but he was one step closer. The villagers had heard the hum of the machine and had gathered around the square, watching in awe as the light flickered on and off. It was just a small victory, but it was a victory nonetheless. For the first time in a long time, the villagers saw something they hadn't seen in ages: hope. The next few days were filled with excitement and anticipation. Alex couldn't believe what he had done. The machine had come to life, even if only for a few moments. But those few seconds were enough to inspire hope in the villagers. The power grid, which had been dark and silent for so long, now hummed faintly with life. It wasn't much, but it was the beginning of something bigger. As word spread, the villagers began to gather around the machine, curious and hopeful. They had never seen anything like this before. The human boy, who had once been seen as an outsider, was now their only hope. Some of them whispered among themselves, wondering if the boy had truly unlocked the secret of their village's survival. Others watched quietly, unsure of what to think. Alex, however, was not content with just this small success. He knew there was more work to be done. The machine had come to life for a moment, but it was still far from being fully repaired. There were still many parts that needed fixing, and many questions that needed answers. But for the first time, Alex felt like he was on the right path. The days passed quickly as Alex worked tirelessly to repair the machine. His hands became calloused from the constant labor, and his eyes were often bloodshot from lack of sleep. But the closer he got to fixing the machine, the more determined he became. It was as if the machine was calling to him, urging him to finish the work. The thought of the village's future weighed heavily on his shoulders, but it only fueled his resolve. The villagers, too, began to pitch in. They watched Alex work and saw the effort he was putting in. Slowly but surely, they began to help him in small ways. Some brought tools and spare parts from the ruins of old buildings, while others offered advice or shared their knowledge of the old machines. Even the skeptics started to believe that Alex might be able to do it. The sense of unity that had been missing for so long began to return to the village. One afternoon, while Alex was working on the machine, he noticed an alien woman standing nearby watching him. She was tall and had bright green skin with intricate patterns that ran down her arms like veins. Her eyes were a pale blue, almost glowing in the sunlight. Alex had seen her around the village before, but they had never spoken. She was one of the village's engineers, known for her skills with machines, but she had been quiet ever since the village's problems began. Alex paused in his work and looked up at her. "Can I help you with something?" he asked. The woman stepped forward, her eyes studying the machine. "I've been watching you work," she said, her voice calm but firm. "You're doing something no one thought possible. But this machine, it's old. Very old. It's beyond repair." Alex's heart sank. "I know it's old, but I think I can fix it. I've been studying it for days." The woman hesitated for a moment before speaking again. "I believe you. But this isn't just about fixing the machine. It's about understanding it. The power it holds. It's more than just energy. It's the key to our survival." Alex felt a chill run down his spine. He had suspected that there was something more to the machine than just its technical aspects, but he had never dared to think too deeply about it. The woman's words confirmed his fears. "What do you mean?" Alex asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The woman took a deep breath. "The power core was designed to do more than just power the village. It was built to protect us, to shield us from the dangers of this planet. The storms, the earthquakes, the dust storms. The power core was meant to keep us safe. Without it, we're vulnerable." Alex stared at the machine, his mind racing. "So, if I don't fix it, we're all in danger?" The woman nodded. "Yes, but you're not alone in this. We can help. We can work together." For the first time since arriving on Zarnis, Alex felt a sense of relief. He wasn't alone in this after all. The villagers were beginning to come. Together, each offering their own knowledge and skills to help him. It wasn't just about fixing a broken machine anymore. It was about saving their home. The days that followed were a blur of activity. Alex worked closely with the villagers, using every bit of knowledge he had learned from his time on Zarnis and Earth. They worked as a team, each person contributing something vital to the process. The once broken machine began to take shape, its power core slowly coming back to life. With each passing day, the hum of the machine grew stronger, and the village began to show signs of life. One evening, as the sun began to set, Alex stepped back from the machine and wiped the sweat from his brow. The work was far from finished, but they had made significant progress. The machine now glowed faintly, a sign that it was functioning once again. The villagers gathered around, their faces filled with a mix of awe and excitement. The once silent streets were now filled with life. Children ran through the village, their laughter echoing in the air. The women and men of the village spoke to each other in hushed tones, their voices full of hope. For the first time in a long time, the village felt alive. Alex looked at the machine, his heart swelling with pride. He wasn't just fixing a broken machine. He was rebuilding a community. The villagers had come together, each one contributing in their own way, and now they were on the brink of success. The alien woman who had helped him along the way stood beside him. "You've done it," she said quietly. "You've given us hope." Alex nodded, but he wasn't done yet. He still had a long way to go. But for the first time since he had crash-landed on Zarnus, he felt like he belonged. He wasn't just a human boy anymore. He was part of something much bigger. The Topo power core was beginning to hum with energy, and for the first time in a long while, the village was alive with the possibility of a future. The days following the first signs of progress were some of the busiest Alex had ever experienced. The machine, once dormant and broken, was beginning to show real signs of life, and with each passing day, the hope of the villagers grew stronger. They had watched the human boy work tirelessly, his small victories now seeming like miracles. It was as if they had all forgotten what it felt like to have hope, but now it was slowly returning, one piece at a time. Alex was exhausted. His hands were calloused from hours of working on the machine, and his mind felt like it was on the edge of breaking from the constant problem-solving. But despite the fatigue, he couldn't stop. The village needed him. The villagers were counting on him, and he couldn't let them down. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the village, Alex stood back from the machine. His eyes, tired but determined, scanned the work he had done so far. The power core was now fully connected, the glowing lights flickering in the dimming light of the day. But there was still a long way to go. He needed to connect the final components to stabilize the energy flow and make the machine fully operational. It was at this moment that the villagers, who had gathered in the square, began to approach him one by one. The once silent crowd was now murmuring, their voices full of curiosity and hope. "I have some spare parts from the old farms," said one of the older women, holding out a small bundle of tools. "I found some wiring that might be useful," added a young man, handing Alex a coil of material that looked like it could be the missing piece. "I can help you," came another voice, a deep voice from behind. Alex turned to see the wise elder, Korak, the one who had first shown interest in his work. Korak smiled, his wrinkled face lighting up with warmth. "We all want to help. It's time we all did our part." Alex's heart swelled with gratitude. He had been working alone for so long that it hadn't even occurred to him that the villagers might want to join in the effort. Now, with their help, the machine could be fixed faster. The power it would bring back to the village could be restored, and the dream of seeing the village thrive again was finally within reach. "This is exactly what we need," Alex said, his voice full of excitement. "Everyone gather around, we have work to do." The villagers formed a circle around the machine, each person eager to contribute. Some had skills with machines, while others were just there to help in whatever way they could. For the first time in years, the village felt like a community again. Everyone was working together, each person contributing their skills, knowledge, and resources to the common goal. Alex was amazed at how quickly the villagers rallied around the effort. The older women worked alongside the younger men, their hands steady, as they helped to fix broken wires and connect the final pieces of the machine. The children, who had previously played in the dirt and dust of the village streets, now watched in wonder as the adults worked together. Their laughter filled the air as they ran and played, giving the village a sense of life it had long been missing. Even the most skeptical villagers, who had once doubted Alex's ability to fix the machine, were now eager to help. They had seen the human boy accomplish what they thought was impossible, and now they wanted to be part of the success. It was as if their belief in Alex had rekindled their belief in the village itself. As the night wore on, the energy in the village began to shift. The air was filled with a sense of determination and hope. Alex worked alongside the villagers, giving directions, adjusting pieces of the machine, and tightening bolts. He was grateful for the help, but he also felt the weight of the responsibility on his shoulders. The village's future was in his hands, and the thought of failing them was unbearable. Korak, who had been quietly observing Alex's work, approached him again. "You've brought us together, Alex," he said, his voice calm but full of respect. "We've forgotten what it felt like to work as one. This machine, this power core, it's more than just technology. It's a symbol of what we can do together. We've lost so much, but now we are finding our way back." Alex smiled at the elder's words. "I didn't do it alone. Everyone is working together now. That's what makes the difference." Korak nodded. "And that's why we will succeed." Hours passed, and the machine was finally taking shape. The power core, once a pile of broken and forgotten parts, was now a functioning, powerful device. The village's energy began to hum steadily, the lights flickering brighter as the machine warmed up. Alex stepped back, wiping his brow, and watched as the villagers continued to work, each person moving with purpose. By the time dawn broke the next morning, the machine was nearly complete. The first signs of power were visible. The lights in the village began to glow faintly, and the machines that had long been silent began to hum back to life. There was still more to do, but Alex could see the finish line. The dream of a restored village was closer than ever. The villagers stood together, watching the progress unfold. They were tired, but the look in their eyes was one of pride and excitement. For the first time in a long time, they had something to look forward to. They had hope. Alex turned to the villagers and raised his hand. "We're almost there. We've come this far together. Let's finish this, for the village, for all of us." The villagers cheered, their voices lifting into the air like a song. They were no longer the broken, tired people who had once thought they were beyond saving. Now, they were united, working toward a brighter future. And it was all because of the boy who had come to their planet with nothing but determination and a will to help. Together, they would rebuild the village, piece by piece. The morning air was filled with excitement as the final pieces of the power core began to fall into place. The villagers had worked tirelessly over the past few days, and Alex could feel the weight of their combined effort resting on his shoulders. The once crumbling machine, which had seemed like an impossible puzzle, was now humming with energy, a sign of the village's future slowly coming into focus. But as the power began to rise, so did the urgency. The task wasn't finished yet. There were still dangers ahead. The winds of the planet began to stir again, a sign that another storm was on the horizon. The villagers had grown accustomed to these storms. They had always come and gone, but this one felt different. There was an unnatural stillness in the air, a heaviness that the villagers couldn't quite place. As they worked, some of them looked up at the sky, their faces filled with concern. Alex paused for a moment, wiping his forehead with his sleeve. He could sense the tension in the air. The storm was coming, and it was going to be the final test for the power core. If they didn't finish the machine in time, the village could be destroyed. The power core, which they had all worked so hard to bring back to life, was their last line of defense. "We need to hurry," Alex said, turning to Korak, who had been standing beside him. The old engineer was working diligently, connecting the final wires and recalibrating the power systems. "The storm's going to hit soon. If we don't finish, everything we've done might be for nothing." Korak glanced up at the darkening sky. "You're right, Alex. We must complete the core now. We cannot afford to wait." The wind picked up, rustling through the trees and sending dust swirling into the air. The village, once quiet and still, now felt charged with anticipation. The villagers worked faster, their movements synchronized as if they were all driven by the same purpose. The power core was almost complete, but it was a delicate operation. One wrong move, and everything could fall apart. Alex focused on his work, not allowing himself to think about the storm. The machine had come so far, and he knew it would work. He had to believe that. Every wrench turn, every wire connected, brought them closer to their goal. As he tightened the final bolt, he felt a strange energy rise from the machine. The power was building, and it was almost ready. But just as Alex took a step back to admire their work, a loud roar echoed across the sky. The ground beneath them trembled, and the first drops of rain began to fall. The storm was here. A deep rumble filled the air, and the villagers gasped. The sky turned dark, clouds swirling and twisting in unnatural patterns. The storm was like nothing they had ever experienced. Thunder cracked, and lightning flashed across the sky. The power core, which had taken so long to fix, now had to prove itself. "Activate it now," shouted Korak over the roar of the storm. Alex didn't hesitate. He rushed to the control panel, his heart pounding in his chest. The villagers watched, holding their breath, as he punched in the final command to power up the core. For a moment, there was only silence. And then, a burst of light exploded from the core, filling the sky with a brilliant glow. The machine hummed louder than ever before, its energy pulsing through the village like a heartbeat. The power core was now fully functional, and with it, the village's defense systems came to life. The energy shield, which had been dormant for years, flared to life around the village. The storm raged outside, but the village was protected. The shield shimmered in the air, a translucent barrier that absorbed the force of the wind and rain, keeping the villagers safe. The power core's energy was feeding into every corner of the village, powering the lights, the water systems, and even the communications systems. For the first time in a long time, the village felt alive again. The villagers cheered, their voices rising in unison as they watched the storm crash against the protective shield. The winds howled, but the barrier held firm. The storm could not penetrate. The village was safe. Alex, standing at the center of it all, felt a rush of relief flood through him. The storm, which had once been a source of fear and destruction, was now nothing more than a distant roar outside the safety of the village. He had done it. He had helped save the village. And in doing so, he had given them more than just power. He had given them hope. The storm continued to rage for hours, but inside the village there was peace. The machines hummed, the lights shone brightly, and the villagers celebrated their survival. For the first time in a long while, the future seemed bright. The community that had once been on the verge of collapse was now thriving once again. As the storm finally began to pass, the villagers gathered around the power core, their faces filled with gratitude. They had watched Alex work tirelessly for weeks, and now they understood the true value of his efforts. He had done more than fix a machine. He had restored their way of life. Korak, who had been standing quietly beside Alex, placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "You've done more than we could have ever hoped for," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You saved us, Alex. You've given us a chance to rebuild." Alex smiled, though he was still catching his breath from the intensity of the moment. "We did it together," he said. "This village wouldn't have been able to do it alone. Everyone here played a part." The villagers nodded, their faces filled with admiration and respect for the young human who had brought them. All together. They had once seen him as an outsider, but now he was one of them. They had all worked together to save the village, and Alex had been the spark that ignited their hope. As the last remnants of the storm faded into the distance, the village stood strong, its power restored, and its future secured. Alex had done what seemed impossible, and in doing so, he had shown them that even in the darkest times, hope could still be found. The storm had passed, leaving behind a sky that was now bright with the first rays of the sun. The air was still, the winds no longer howling, and the village was finally quiet after days of tension and uncertainty. The power core, which had been the last hope for the village, was now fully functional, its soft hum filling the air. Alex stood in the center of it all, surrounded by the villagers who were now beginning to breathe a sigh of relief. The village, once on the brink of destruction, was alive again, The lights flickered to life, the machines began to hum, and the energy shields around the village glowed faintly. The plants in the village's small gardens, which had withered in the absence of the power grid, now stood tall and healthy, nourished by the restored water system. The wells, which had been dry for years, were once again flowing with fresh water. It was nothing short of a miracle. The villagers, who had once been silent and resigned to their fate, were now filled with energy and excitement. The children ran through the streets, their laughter echoing in the air as they played in the sunlight. The adults, who had spent so many years working in fear and survival, now found themselves working together in peace, their spirits lifted by the miracle that had taken place. Alex stood to the side, watching the village come alive around him. He felt a deep sense of pride, but also a quiet exhaustion. The work had been long and difficult, and he had given everything he had to fix the machine and save the village. But now that it was over, he realized that the hardest part was not the work itself. It was the fact that he had become part of this community. He had found a family in the most unexpected place. Korak, the wise elder who had first believed in Alex, walked up to him, his old face breaking into a smile. "You've done it, Alex. The village is saved. The machines are running again, and we are protected." Alex smiled back, but the weight of the moment was not lost on him. "We did it together. Everyone here played a part. I may have fixed the machine, but it's the villagers who gave it life." Korak nodded, his eyes gleaming with respect. "You may have fixed the machine, but you've done something even more important. You've brought us all together again. We have hope now, Alex. Hope that we didn't have before." The young boy looked around the village, taking in the bustling streets, the people laughing and talking, the machines working as they should. He had always dreamed of making a difference, of doing something that mattered, but he had never imagined that he would be the one to save a whole village, let alone one so far from Earth. He had come to this planet stranded and alone, but now he was part of something much larger than himself. As the villagers gathered around, the power core to witness its steady glow, Alex felt a tap on his shoulder. He turned to find the alien woman, the one who had been by his side since the very beginning. She had watched him work tirelessly on the machine and had helped him in ways he had never expected. "You've done more than just fix the power core," she said quietly, her blue eyes shining. "You've given us a new beginning." Alex gave her a soft smile. "I just did what needed to be done." She shook her head. "You don't understand. You didn't just repair a machine. You repaired our community. You made us believe in something again." The words hit Alex deeper than he had expected. He had been so focused on fixing the machine, on solving the technical challenges, that he hadn't realized the emotional impact of what he was doing. He wasn't just saving their home, he was restoring the spirit of the village, bringing the people together again after so many years of isolation and fear. As the days passed, the village continued to grow stronger. The power core was now fully integrated into the village's systems, and the energy shield that surrounded them remained strong, protecting them from the harsh storms of the planet. The once quiet streets were now filled with life, and the people worked side by side, rebuilding what had been lost. Alex had become a central part of the community. He helped wherever he could, fixing machines, assisting with the water systems, and even teaching the villagers how to maintain the new power grid. They had begun to trust him, not just as a stranger, but as a member of their family. In return, Alex had learned from them as well. The alien culture, their history, their traditions. He was beginning to understand it all. The villagers threw a celebration in Alex's honor one evening. It was a small gathering, but the warmth and gratitude in the air were overwhelming. The children danced in the streets, their laughter filling the air. The elders shared stories of their people, their customs, and the history of their village. It was a time for reflection, for gratitude, and for celebration. As the night drew on, Alex stood on a small platform, surrounded by the villagers. Korak raised his hand to signal the end of the ceremony, and the crowd fell silent. "I think I speak for all of us when I say this," Korak began, his voice strong and steady. "We are no longer a village on the brink of death. We are a community reborn, thanks to the human boy who never gave up. Alex, you are not just our savior. You are our friend. You are part of us now." The crowd cheered, and Alex felt his heart swell with emotion. He had come to this planet as an outsider, unsure of his place in this strange world. But now, he knew that he had found his purpose. He had helped save this village, and in doing so, he had found a family. As the celebration continued into the night, Alex stood among the people, watching the stars twinkle above. The future of the village was secure, and for the first time since his crash, Alex felt at peace. He had done something that mattered, something that would change the course of their history, and now he was ready to start the next chapter of his life, knowing that he had made a difference.